The time for empty talk is over.
It's going to be great.
What's going on, and welcome to episode 11 of the Pint&Politics podcast. Now, before we get into it, for the real OGs of the channel, if you have watched all our videos, you will actually recognise the room I'm in. It's actually the room I filmed the very first introduction to the show video, so a little throwback there. So, anyway.
Also, little throwback, you got a soul as well.
I was going to mention that.
I've just realised that now, yeah.
The closest thing I've only got Coronas, so that's the closest we'll get to the original. But without further ado, let's get into it. So we've got Jack with us today. How are you doing, Jack?
Hey up, I'm alright, how are you?
Not bad, thank you, not bad. Luke, how are you?
Good. Fantastic as always, mate. Not too bad. How about you?
I'm not bad, getting through lockdown, getting through it as you can.
So, tier 3 and that.
Yeah. So we've got an interesting couple of topics today. So I want to start off with one that you mentioned, Jack, before the podcast. So Russia. So
yeah,
as we said off camera, or as I said off camera, it's not much something I know quite a lot about. So if you want to introduce the topic to us, that'd be great.
Well, as we all know, Biden's now the president, and he said quite recently that Russia is one of the biggest threats to democracy that's out there. So I thought that's quite. I'm more sort of talking about it in a English, British sort of threat to us. But yeah, I've sort of wanna. I just find it really interesting. I thought we've been long enemies, haven't we? The East versus West. It's been a long, drawn out, not really conflict, but dispute, I suppose. But yeah, I thought he's quite brave to single them out, I suppose. But he's leader of the free world now, isn't he?
What would you say then? He's kind of Russia's threat. Would you say it's more militarily, or would you say it's kind of a cyber attack type thing? What would you say it is?
I'd say cyber, to be honest. It's not. I think the age of military sort of attacks as there's the threat of nuclear. It's sort of gone now. The idea that they're going to invade. It's more just chucking misinformation at us, and with cyber attacks being the main sort of thing. But it's quite difficult to single out Russia as the attacker, because they may be in Russia but not before the Russian government. So it's quite a difficult thing to fight against, I suppose, when you don't know where they're coming from.
Luke, what do you see, Luke? How do you see Russia as a threat? Do you see it as a real threat, or do you think it's kind of just a bit of a power trip? What do you think?
I think I agree with Jack, to be fair. I think it's a lot more to do with cyber nowadays. I think that's the case for many countries, apart from your outstanding exceptions such as North Korea or Cuba back 20, 30 years ago, because they obviously didn't have the technology. But these countries like Russia, I feel like even Iran and Iraq could be you could make a case for it being cyber, because it's definitely affecting as you can see, it's affecting the US in terms of the elections. Obviously, they came out with that they did have influence in. I don't know if it was the 2016 election or this election, but you can tell that Russia are getting a lot more involved in cyber attacks. So it's definitely, we'll see how it plays out, but I definitely agree with Jack on the main front there.
So that's kind of a good point that you made, Luke, about the 2016 election. So, Jack, how much do you think, say, Russia, really interfered with that? Would you say it's quite a lot? Would you say it's minuscule? Would it a bit in the middle? Where would you say how much they really interfere?
I suppose it's quite difficult to judge in it, but I know that the Mueller report came out and said there was no real evidence to support the idea that that Trump was pushed in by Russia. But then I think it then also wrote that the full report didn't take into account context of the whole situation. But I don't. It's a difficult one. I suppose we'll never really know, because you can't. Once something's embedded in someone's head, whether it be in misinformation or true fact, it's always going to be there. And even if it's been disproved, you've always got that. Is it into it? So I think it probably did help, but then also it may have been just for people that really didn't want Trump in. It's an scapegoat from us. wasn't fair. Let's redo it because it was this foreign intervention. So it's
I guess that's quite interesting. I guess, that's a good point. People on either side are going to say, well, it's just a scapegoat, and the other side will go, so, well, no, there is interference, and do it that way. I think that's quite a good point, because obviously it cropped up again with the 2020 election, because I think it was Department of Homeland Security came out with a report a couple of months before the election, and said basically, look, there's different countries going, like, supporting either side. So I think there was China and the Iranians who were kind of using it to kind of have a go at Trump and kind of get Biden to win because they saw Trump as unpredictable. But on the other hand, apparently the Russians wanted Trump to win because they didn't like Biden. So it's kind of interesting, that kind of dynamic of, there's foreign interference, but they're interfering for both sides. So I guess that's kind of a weird take on it.
I think it was someone came out to say that before the 2020 election, Saudi Arabia, I'm not sure if it was, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Russia and China actually had all infiltrated the online voting booths, but they don't know whether they've done anything, but they'd actually got access to it.
I guess that's another topic, actually. It's a great one. I don't think we've actually just really discussed that yet on the channel since the election. I'll ask you both this. I'll start with you, Jack. How much... I mean, there's obviously these allegations going about with, voter fraud or, missing ballots, whatever. How much do you think really that interfered with the election, if at all, or what do you see of it?
Well, I think it's quite a lot of noise, wasn't it? I suppose the idea of missing ballots, didn't they work out that, like, one of the voter employees only had about 50 ballots in his car, and that was a mistake, and then they're chasing quite minuscule amounts, which wouldn't actually make a difference. But yeah, it's I don't know if it's just a lot of noise that's been picked up by people that by both sides again, but I suppose it's probably had something to play, and you can never make online voting truly safe, secure at the moment, and then the same with counting. There's human errors that are always gonna influence anything, really.
What about you, Lou? What do you think? How much do you think it played a part? Because obviously we were both watching it on election night, talking to each other, and it's all. I don't know whether we probably got caught up a bit, seeing the kind of the stop-ins and then the kind of these jump totals and going, hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? So, but
I think we always do get caught up on election night, but I think we talked about it in the last podcast about the fact that there could possibly be voter fraud. Trump was making a lot of noise back then. I think it'd be about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Obviously, it's calmed down since the election, and just there seems to be still insufficient evidence. So, if there were cases of voter fraud, I don't think it'll be enough to sway the election in Trump's favour.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, it has been brought through the courts. I guess that's the thing to me that kind of people were forgetting with all this, because you had both sides kind of entrenched. You kind of had on the right-hand side with the Trump team, well, there's these massive allegations of voter fraud, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then the other side, you've got, well, what are you on about? This is the cleanest election ever. Biden won. It's like, well, no, I think that, like I said, there is individuals, maybe 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 there, but it's not enough to sway the hundreds of thousands really to take it. And I think people just needed to know, look, there is a legal system in place. It went through the courts. The Supreme Court denied to hear it twice, I think with 2 different hearings, and they lost, and then the Electoral College voted, was it yesterday or the day before, I think? I couldn't remember the day before that.
Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, 14. So the Electoral College has voted now. So Biden, is officially, president-elect. So, but kind of keeping it with Russia. Obviously, how you were talking about, the military threat. As I was researching it before, I found that Russia in kind of the back end of 2019 tested a intercontinental ballistic missile. That's a mouthful. Which flies at, for aerospace, for anyone who does aerospace, flies at Mach 27, which is 27 times the speed of sound. It's kind of a new atomic kind of weapon, I suppose. So
when did they test this?
I think it's December 2019. I think it's called the Avant-Garde.
Yeah, it's quite recently.
Yeah, Avant-Garde ballistic missile systems. So with that in mind, I think, one kind of thing we haven't talked about actually on the podcast before, and I'll put this to you, Jack. how do you see NATO? Do you kind of see it as a relic? Do you think it's still important nowadays, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit past it. I'd probably say at the moment, especially with it's a prime target, I suppose, for blame for things when you've got this intergovernmental sort of entity, and it's. But I don't really know what it does anymore. It was built as a threat. It was built as a barrier to the Soviets, and now Soviet Union's gone. I suppose you can't always fully remove the people's sort of dislike towards. I suppose you have, like, say in Russia, if they were born during the Soviet Union, they've been told the West is bad, but it fell in the 90s, didn't it? So it's been a long time now. So it probably needs a bit of a reform, but I suppose at the moment it's not as, I suppose the UN may have more have taken over its sort of role as on the worldwide scale, rather than I suppose Europe sort of calmed down a bit more now.
Luke, what do you think? How do you see NATO?
I still see that it's quite a tough one, because, as Jack said, it's quite old-fashioned, bit of a relic in terms of it was just, against the Soviet Union, which has now obviously been dissolved for a number of years. But I agree, it needs some sort of reform in terms of like security around. Obviously, I think it's Europe. I think it's just Europe, NATO. But it needs to move on. It needs to what's the word? Just I don't know. Just update itself in terms of the modern era. But I think it's still, obviously, I think it's a good thing to still be in NATO, because it like guarantees us that security. But yeah, it just needs updating, in my opinion.
For me, it's a bit of a tricky one, because, like I said, NATO was formed as kind of a stalwart against the Soviets. Actually, interestingly, I think researching it in the first year for one of his modules, I think it was international relations, I did a bit about NATO. And the Soviets originally wanted to join because they said, let's do it as kind of like a thing against German rearmament. And the entire Western nations went, fuck off, we're not having that. So, but it's a strange one. So it's built against the Soviets. Obviously, the Soviet Union falls, and then it kind of morphs in kind of a barrier against Russia. But then you've got countries like Germany, for example, which are on about building new gas pipelines with Russia. And it's like, well, what's the point in NATO then if Germany's going to do these big dealings with Russia? Going to rely on Russian energy. Seems a bit counterproductive. Because I know Trump used that as kind of one of his things against NATO to get countries to pay up. Kind of say, well, why are you paying the Russians when we're supposed to be defending you against them? But I don't know how much Russia would actually push it. How far westwards would they try and advance, really? Because, I think the last time anything Russia did anything like that was in like 2008 in Georgia. I think they pushed into there. But I think other than that, I can't see Russia really doing anything.
Would you see Russia in terms of Ukraine, like the involvement?
You say they invaded,
which was
2014,
invading like Crimea. And that.
That's a good point, actually. Actually, that's another thing that I want to bring up with Russia. Actually, so obviously, like I said, Jack. So Biden's president-elect. And he obviously like I said, he sees Russia as a big threat. How do you see him dealing with Russia?
I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a difficult one. It's like his foreign policy is probably going to be more more tougher sort of towards Russia, same as I suppose Obama was. But it's I don't really know what he can do. I suppose he'd have to beef up the security of the cyberspace. But he's called him. He said that Putin. Last time he saw him, he said he had no soul, which may sting him a bit. May sting Putin a little bit, and then what is it? It's like a month and a bit after the election, and Putin's finally acknowledged the fact that, well, he said he was waiting for the US to sum it up. But he's also said that there's no relationship left between Russia and the US. So I suppose I don't really know what he will do. there's no military. I suppose he won't be. He might reinforce the Ukraine again, but I think it's a bit unlikely deploying troops in an area where I think they're still under ceasefire in I think the Crimea is fully Russian now. Well, they had a referendum which made it part of the. They said that the people of the Crimea will join Russia instead, and it's I think economically it's proper declined, so it's a bit of a tough one, I suppose.
What about you, Lot? How do you see Biden's foreign policy in those terms?
Again, it's going to be a difficult one. I think it's going to be quite close in terms of. I've not really put much thought into it, to be honest. But in terms of like Russia, obviously, I think he'll want to keep good relations with Russia. They're a massive. I'd say there's a massive powerhouse in Europe. In my opinion, it'd be mad to like befriend them. I know that's what Hillary might have done because she was saying quite a lot of negative things towards Russia back in 2016. And I think if she was president, it could have gone tits up with US and Russia. But I think Biden's taking a more lenient stance towards obviously Putin, and but they're not going to have that same relationship that Trump had with Putin, in my opinion, anyway.
For me, I think, again, I think he's going to be quite. I think he might talk tough, Biden, but I don't see him doing much. Because like I said, talking about Crimea, the Russians took Crimea while Biden was vice president. Yeah. So, I mean, I know obviously there's all the talk about Trump and Putin being best friends, and the P-tip stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I guess. Trump has still kept sanctions on quite a few, high-ranking Russian officials, and he has armed the Ukrainians up to a point, because that the whole phone call thing, that was about, I think it was anti-tank missiles, where he ended up getting impeached. So I don't know about Biden's foreign policy. I think he might talk tough on Russia, but when it comes to it, I think Russia might play with him a bit, to be honest. But yeah, I don't see him really being too tough foreign policy wise. But actually, one of the other topics that we're also going to talk about, so Brexit, the big B word. How kind of link it together? Do you think that kind of the UK separation from Europe? Do you think that's going to have any effect, Jack, on that kind of thing against Russia? Do you think it'll have any effect? Or?
What on our response to Russia?
Yeah, do you reckon I don't know, do you reckon it's going to weaken Europe's kind of defences or anything like that? Do you think it'll change the relationship?
I'm not sure about with the EU, but I suppose with Britain we've just boosted up the defence budget, haven't we? And part within the defence budget we've allocated money to create a cyber squad, I think it was called, something along those lines. So you'd hope that we're in the UK terms, we're breaking off from the EU. We might create a barrier to prevent like any more misinformation from coming in. But we've not. I suppose, what was it, 2016? There was the poisonings. It might have been a bit later than that, and we didn't do anything.
Yeah,
a British citizen died. Another was.
There's a lot of talk, wasn't there?
Yeah, a lot of talk. We kicked out as many diplomats as we did during the Cold War. But diplomats, what do they? I suppose diplomats are more symbolic now. You could do it over a phone call or a Zoom if you really wanted to sort out an international crisis. They're more of a symbolic sort of, look, we're sending someone to you, you send someone to us. We've got a bit of land in your area, but I suppose if we're leaving the EU, there's the whole debacle with the crime records and the
is it Interpol? Is that it, Interpol?
Yeah, that's the one, Interpol. And it's if we lose access to that, then we're going to be at risk, aren't we? We won't know the criminal records of people, so it's going to allow for more potential FSB agents to come in. So it's I suppose it's a difficult one, but it's all everything talking about Russia is a difficult one. We've got nothing to compare it to, have we? We was just at each other's throats during the Cold War. There was no direct one-on-one action, so we've no idea like how to deal with the whole situation. I suppose it's a completely different issue.
What about you, Luke? How do you see it playing out?
I actually couldn't give you an answer, to be honest. It's going to be. I think it could go either way, to be honest. I think we'll either go independent in terms of like we won't need the EU's help, which I don't think we need, because we can get trade deals from like anywhere else. We can get one from Japan, which we've already got. I think we'll make good relations with the US, even with Biden. I think we'll still make good relations with Russia, despite having obviously them poisonings back in I think 2018 or 2016, I can't remember. But I think that's all blown over. So I don't think there'll be any like bad blood between us and Russia, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So it's an interesting point you brought up there, Jack, with those poisonings, because this isn't the first time Russia's done this. They did it back in 2006. Was it Litvinenko, the ex-Russian spy?
I think it's happened twice here, hasn't it?
Yeah, so
3 times now, actually.
Yeah, like I said, so this is nothing. And didn't Putin poison the Russian opposition leader with the same stuff, that Novichok?
He's just Alexander. What is he? Navalny. He was on a plane in Siberia trying to rile up some opposition support, and he had a cup of tea. It was the only thing he consumed, and then he was in he had a seizure and he had shock, and then the pilots wouldn't let him go to Germany for the special treatment, and the Kremlin waited before they let ambulance crews on. But now it's come out. I think he said today, Putin, that Navalny's working with the US, and this was nothing to do with them. So it's. I think before this Navalny has been arrested before during the last election under gun charges, and I don't know if it was the Spetsnaz or whatever. They raided his apartment and found guns. So then he was imprisoned during the election, so he couldn't run. He's been all the other opposition leaders and journalists have either mysteriously disappeared or been killed. So or beaten up in an area with no cameras. So it's an authoritarian regime that claims to be a democracy. But what we to do is we can't intervene, really, can we? We can't. It's such a massive thing that I suppose there's still probably a lot of people, probably the young now, that disagree with Putin and his more Soviet, I suppose, ideas. But it's what do we do? We just have to hopefully make friends with them, and so they don't get us again. But yeah,
I guess that is the question. I guess that, we can criticise Theresa May. 2 British citizens were poisoned on our soil, and it's clearly the Russians who've done it. Again, this is not the first time they've done this, and it's probably not the last. So, what do we do? There's only so many economic sanctions. I mean, Russia's a gangster state. It runs on economic sanctions. It's like North Korea. It just goes, through the black market. So, what can we do? There's only so much militarily, I guess, we can do. But that's going to escalate things to a point we probably don't want to escalate it to. So, what really can we do? Like I said, Russia's no thing to anything like false flag attacks, for instance. So they bombed their own apartment buildings in Moscow, and blamed it on the Chechens, and then they used that to go into Chechnya to invade. So they're no stranger to anything like that. Putin especially. So it's what really do we do?
He's ex-KGB, isn't he? It's all child's play to him.
Yeah, well, I think actually it was a couple of months ago, because I think me and you talked about in the group chat, Jack, about he had that election, didn't he, about giving him term limits, getting rid of term limits.
Yeah.
What can you explain what it was?
So in the Russian constitution, you can only run, I think, a total of 20 years, 24 years, and he was trying to just basically get rid of that. He was gonna do a referendum to get rid of that, along with some other changes which writing the Eastern Orthodox Church into the Russian constitution, which in turn would completely ban same-sex marriage. He was trying to slip that under the rug with this. It was because it's quite a big Eastern Orthodox is the big religion over there. I think the former Tsar is a saint, but that's just another thing.
Is it? Oh, what is it Rasputin? Wasn't he a big Orthodox character? I think before the revolution.
Yeah, I think he was a monk, and he was the official counsel to the Tsar, which didn't end well for him.
There was a big thing about him shagging the Tsar's wife, I think, at one point.
Oh yeah.
So, was it basically he was using that then to get rid of term limits? So he's basically de facto dictator for life.
Yeah, he's to get around it before he was prime minister because you're allowed to do that, and then there was a president with someone else, but he was more or less in control anyway. But yeah, he was basically trying to rule for. I think he's already in his 60s, his 70s. He was trying to basically make himself into an official dictator by completely removing term limits. But I'm not sure if the referendum actually went through. They had to delay it due to I think there was protests about it, and then it all went a bit quiet. So I'm not actually 100% sure if they had the referendum.
I guess
but it was scheduled.
Yeah. So, I mean, sticking with Russia still. So, bringing it on to contemporary stuff with coronavirus. Did they release their vaccine that they had? Do you know? Or
yeah, they. I think they. I don't know if you confirm, but they think they stole it, the Oxford one, and then worked on it themselves. So Oxford did all the hard work, and they finished it. Called it Sputnik after the first object to orbit space, and then I think it comes in 3 doses. Theirs, and it was it. When Pfizer came out, when Pfizer came out, were they 90% sure when they first announced? Russia was 92, just conveniently. And as a way to prove that it worked, he gave it to one of his daughters, who isn't usually in the public eye, but he gave it to one of his daughters anyway, and she was fine, conveniently. Yeah. And they have started mass vaccinations over there, but they had. I know it's not great over there. I think a hospital in Moscow caught fire quite recently on the COVID ward. They were building emergency hospitals like China or in Siberia to accommodate the flu, but they've reopened up the economy because as they could cope with it. So they just reopened it, and obviously that just opens the floodgates to. Well, they reopened the lockdowns for the economy, and then that doesn't. Depending on how you play, it doesn't work very well, does it?
Oh, I think the BBC did a report maybe a week or so ago. I think they were talking about coronavirus in Russia, and I think there was hospital staff going around videoing and saying, look, Putin's lying to you. It's not under control. There's like these body bags all down, like the wards and everything, and then there's people saying, look, we can't build coffins fast enough. So it's kind of like China in a way. I don't think we'll ever know the true death toll. They're not going to tell the true numbers. China's not going to tell the true numbers. So, but I guess sticking with coronavirus then, Jack, how would you from now? So where we are now, say in Britain, for example, how would you kind of take us out of this, or how would you go from here? So from where we are now.
I wouldn't open up for Christmas. I don't think. I think it's pointless. Conveniently the North is still in Tier 3 after today's announcement. But it's just, what is the point of going into lockdown for? What is it? We went into lockdown. Now we're in Tier 3, and then we're just going to open everything up again, so the virus won't care for 5 days, and then we're going back into. I wouldn't have Christmas open. I mean, people haven't had birthdays, weddings, anniversaries. Christmas, sacrifice it for next year. If it means having more of next year, why bother having having it, because I suppose maybe the reason they've done it is they've been under so much pressure due to the mental health crisis that they thought we can't lock people away on Christmas when it's to get together. But it's just not worth it, is it? When we've come so far, we've got a vaccine that will or will not work. It's just you have to properly distribute that before and just create the herd immunity that they really wanted at the beginning to hopefully get it over with as quickly as possible, and then for the summer and the spring reopen everything. Hopefully there'll be, well, I say hopefully, there shouldn't be another everyone being vaccinated. It should work. There shouldn't be the third wave, and it should. I'm not an economist, so I can't tell you exactly, but yeah, that's it's got to be better than just wasting all this trying we've been doing.
Has he pushed? I might be wrong about it. Has he pushed furlough back till April? Has Rishi Sunak pushed it back? Yeah, I thought so. To me, that indicates another lockdown in the new year. To me, I think that's what's inevitable. Luke, what do you think? Where would you take us from here?
So I think I've seen on official reports saying that as of yesterday, I think almost 200,000 people have got the vaccine already, which is a lot in a week or a week and a half since the vaccine's been available. And it's been for 80 plus and the social workers, so they're getting through that quite quickly. Why change now? Like, obviously, Christmas is around the corner. People want to see families. I get that, but we've made sacrifices like this year completely. I think only January, February, and middle of March, which we've actually had freedom. But we just need to continue making these sacrifices for a few months now, and then we need to just wait until we've got a vaccine. I think we'll get vaccinated near my birthday in March, so hopefully we go back to normality in terms of just getting back to no lockdowns, no restrictions in like May or June. That's me being optimistic about it, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But yeah.
I guess for me, I'm an eternal pessimist. I always see it going wrong, but I think it's difficult. I mean, just thinking about the hospitality sector. They're obviously going to suffer with closures through Christmas. I guess that's the balance that they've got to find as public policy makers. I guess the health versus the economy. There's things they've got to balance. I know from my experience, the pub that I work for, obviously shut down. There are people that are struggling, I guess. The vaccine's great. I think it's brilliant. I'm not one of these idiots who think, Bill Gates is going to trap me. I'm not one of those retards. I understand some people, maybe saying it's rushed or whatever, but I don't think, that there's this mass plan to kill everybody either. I would take it, I think. But I know that there are quite a few people that genuinely won't. And that, that even goes as far as healthcare staff. That people that just won't take it for whatever reason. So I think for me, over Christmas, I think, like I say, we've come this far already being shut down. I think probably stay closed over Christmas, but sometime early in the new year, we've got to start opening it up again. There's already millions that are out of work already. And I think that, the long-term effects of that are going to be so huge. And like you said, Jack, before about the mental health kind of stuff, people not seeing families over Christmas and just, throughout the year and stuff. And even, stuff like this, this kind of helps. It does get you down being alone. And I can only think of, I said this right at the start of the pandemic, I think loneliness, even within the, the older community, that, that's really going to hurt them. Cause a lot of pain and damage and whatever. But I think for me, it's kind of sometime early in the new year, we've got to start opening it up and start to learning to live with it. Because it's never going to go away, this vaccine. The vaccine, fucking hell. It's never going to go away that, oh shit, wait, my screen's gone off. I got a phone call. Sorry. Right. There we go. Right, we're back on. no, it's never going to go away, the coronavirus. It's going to become the new flu. There will always be people dying from it. Can't force people to take the vaccine, for me. Even if it's on religious grounds or, just normal grounds, you can't force anyone to take anything. But yeah, sometimes we've got to open up, for me. Other things in the news. I guess we've gone through kind of I guess coming back to Brexit, actually, Jack. So, do you see, Jack, do you see us getting a deal? And, first off, before we go into that, were you a supporter of Brexit or not, and why? And do you see us getting a deal, no deal? What's your entire thing on it?
Well, I wasn't politically minded when the vote happened. I was 15, so I didn't really care.
Yeah.
But now I would have, if I would to vote, I would have voted to remain personally.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm not one of those who whinge now and say we've got to read it, we've got to have another vote. You got to respect democracy, haven't you? It's happened. Get over it. So I don't know. I've honestly studying it has made me understand it a lot better, and I can see the benefits of staying in, which it's more I don't think the single nation state anymore is as powerful as it once was, and I think that the power of the union will hopefully in the future would have been beneficial, but it's happened now. We're out, hopefully. But I mean, a deal would be nice, but it's been told that a bad deal is not as good as no deal. But now it's looking more likely we won't get a deal, and there's no legal basis to get an extension because it should have been done by July if we wanted to extend the transition period.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it's not looking hopeful. I mean, the pound went up on Wednesday. What would that have been? In the first time in 2 years, which I suppose they must have heard it from somewhere that something's going to happen. So,
yeah. But
I think a deal would be good.
Right, you for a deal. Luke, I'll switch it over to you. What do you think? Are you a deal man? Are you a no deal man? Because we obviously know you're for Brexit. Are you a deal or no deal man?
Yeah, obviously I'm for Brexit, you say. At the start, I was a no deal man. Just get out whenever we could. But now, as it gets closer, I think a deal would probably. I think it would be ideal. But if we do leave with no deal, I won't be complaining. It's just I just don't think we're going to get one. I think von der Leyen and Boris Johnson are just faffing around far too much. But obviously, the deadline's getting closer. I think I said this in our seminar because we're obviously in the same seminar group. I said that I think we're just, like I just said there, we're just faffing around. We aren't really too bothered about getting one. So, yeah, I think we're going to leave with no deal. But if we do live with a deal, I think it's just going to be a bonus. I don't know what your thoughts are, Tom.
I'm the hardliner, me. I'm the radical, so I'm the far right extremist. For me, I understand, people's concerns about the economic costs, of a no deal. I do understand that to a point, but for me, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a world-ending catastrophe. For me, the EU, the EU runs. I mean, for a start of it, the EU runs a trade surplus with Britain. So there is a lot of goods that from the EU that come into Britain. So so if magically we leave on December 31st with no deal, the EU says fuck you, we'll put tariffs on you, whatever. Well, we can just go okay, we'll do the same. There'll be a lot of EU suppliers. I see a lot of businesses complaining, saying, well, we can't get this, we can't get that. For me, the environment of business changes all the time, and you should, to me, as a good CEO of a business, as a good manager of a business, you should be prepping all the time and looking at the different circumstances. And I think there was a column I read, I think it was in the Financial Times or the Telegraph, of a guy who said, look, I saw, I'm watching the news every day, and I've changed my suppliers. I've looked at it and said, okay, there's probably tariffs coming in on the products that I want for my business. So I've changed my suppliers to somewhere in Norway, for instance. I don't know. I think somewhere else, somewhere up in Scandinavia. I don't know. And it's like, it's just, that's the world of business. It changes. You should have procurement managers. Get your stuff in and whatever. But kind of getting back to the central point, I'm no deal purely on the basis of, because there's always this argument about, what was Brexit? What did people vote for? Well, on the the ballot sheet, all it said was, would you rather remain, a member of the EU, or would you like Britain to leave the EU? It didn't say on that. It didn't say a deal. It didn't say we'd stay part of the common market and we won't leave this, or we'd leave this, we'd leave that. It just said leave. So to me, it is it is what it's Ron Seal. It is what it says on the tin. Do you know what I mean? So people voted for different things. I wasn't old enough to vote at the time. I would have voted on judiciary stuff. Other people voted on fishing rights. Other people voted on just the bureaucracy of it. So for me, it's, coming out of it all together is everything that technically people who voted to leave voted for, and then, from there, the EU's never going to sit there and go, well, we're never going to deal with you again. Audi, BMW, Peugeot, just car makers aren't going to sit there and have tariffs on their products. They're going to want to, they're going to want to deal with us. So, but in terms of whether we're going to get a deal, I think fisheries is going to hold it up because, I think they're just too far apart. I think fishing's a big thing for us, and I think for the EU it is as well. And I don't think they can seem to... I mean, when the EU came out a couple of weeks ago saying we can have 15 to 18% of our own fishing catches, or whatever it was, I think, we're going to look at that and go, well, you don't understand. No, that's not how it's going to work. So I think this is just going to be a lot of posturing. I think what will happen is we'll leave with no deal, but then straight away they'll say, but don't worry, we're negotiating something. Do you know what I mean? I think we'll leave, but we'll still try and negotiate something. But yeah.
Just a quick, on fishing, what do you think it makes? How do you think it makes us look as a country, like to the rest of the world? The fact that we're willing to put the Navy out over this issue. What do you think it make? How do you think it makes us look? The fact that we're willing to arm our fishing boats, basically.
Luke,
I don't.
I'll let you go first.
What do you think?
Luke? I'll let you go first.
Well, obviously, in our course, we were picking a country in terms of the EU, because the EU is one of our modules this year. I picked France, and one of our main policy areas that I was doing was the fishing one. And they're in massive conflict with England, and they're basically saying that they're going to arm their fishing boats and defend the fishing rights to like the last day, to be honest. So it's going to be very, very. Yeah, I agree with Tom. It's going to be one of them ones where it's going to hold it down to like the last few minutes of the deadline. But fishing means a lot to, especially the French. Obviously their food and cuisine is mainly dedicated around fish. Likewise with us, but the way it looks on us, it looks quite stupid from an outsider's opinion. Like you're arming over fish. Like what's the point? But fishing is one of our most one of our favourite pastimes, I guess, in terms of like the coasts are really into their fishing. In terms of like Whitby, Grimsby, which I don't live there, but I live near. They pride themselves around fish. That's literally what the town's all about. But yeah, I can see why we are arming our fishing boat, or why we want to arm our fishing boats. But from an outsider's point of view, it just seems a bit stupid to do that over just some fish.
That's a good point actually made there, Luke, about the coastal towns. But I mean, I'll just say, first off, income tax was brought in Britain to pay for a war against the French in the Napoleonic Wars. So all I'm saying is, if we're still paying it, I'm up for another war with the French. That's all I'm saying. Starting off, but I think, like I said, Luke, yeah, there's a lot of coastal towns that especially suffer nowadays. they're quite run down. Whatever. Economically, they're not really sustainable. And I guess the only thing, like you say, for a lot of people around these coastal towns, like I say, Grimsby, for instance, is fishing. It's kind of one of the only things we've got left. And it's whether it's kind of nostalgic, people holding on to, that kind of thing is, we are who we are, this, fishing is our heritage. And I guess, for some countries it might, especially landlocked countries, for say like Austria, for example, they might look at it and go, what are them stupid Brits doing? It's only a bunch of fish. Whereas, I don't know, for people, I don't know, maybe up in Scandinavia like Norway or someone, or, someone like that who relies on fishing and has that part of their culture, they might look at it and go, well, no, they're only defending their, their kind of cultural heritage, I think fishing is only a very, very small part of the British economy. But I think it's like less than 1%, but it's still at the end of the day, it's people's jobs, it's people's livelihoods, it's their heritage. So some countries, rely on fishing, might look at it and say, well, they're only defending that. But as arming fishing boats, I mean, there have been clashes before, haven't there? Where fishing boats are hitting each other and they're firing flares at each other, I think.
Yeah.
Over in fishing rights. But, it's where does that... I guess the question is, well, probably, there's only that small stretch of the channel. What is it, 20 miles, 25 miles? How do you divide that up?
Yeah, it's closest, yeah.
How on earth do you divide that up and say, right, you get that and you get that? Fish don't stay in one place. They go, they don't see borders, do they? They don't see, They just
They don't
swim.
have passports.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have passports. They just swim. So what, are you going to measure every inch and then say, right, we can't fish here, but there's a fish, 20 yards away, we can't get that. It seems a bit silly. But I don't know. In terms of protecting our national identity, I think it would. I think for the Europeans, they probably won't, think we're stupid. But for probably those who were, voting for Brexit, they will probably say, it's Boris standing his ground and saying, look, no, we are protecting our national identity to a point. But yeah, that's how I kind of see it, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that the fish and chips is such a British dish, isn't it? It's like one of our values, I suppose. The fact that the Navy, the pride of Britain or once was, is out there to defend. It's quite a. I suppose it's quite a big thing, and it shows that Britain does. The politicians do care, I suppose, as a belief about it, and it was a big thing during the campaign. The fact that we're going to take back control of our waters. I suppose it was more of a Farage thing at the time, but I suppose that they're doing what they said they were going to do. They're defending the waters. They're taking it back. But realistically, I don't know if. I know there's international law that says how much of the water, but it's so close into there that it's hard to decipher. And it's not like you can see it when you're out there. Yeah. And a map's not always going to, be perfectly pinpointed.
There's not a fence, is there? Yeah. There's not a fence going, right, this is French waters, this is British waters, is there? Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they can board these French fishing vessels anyway, the Navy. I think they need permission to do that. But I suppose it is a show of force.
Is it not an act of war? Surely.
I think you need parliamentary permission to board a foreign vessel. Either, no matter where it is, even if it's in your waters. So
yeah, well,
but
actually,
I suppose
wasn't there that pirate thing recently? Were there some stowaways? Was he from Nigeria? There were some stowaways on a boat, and the special. I swear, recently there was stowaways.
Oh yeah,
over a boat. I don't know whether
near the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, was it near the Isle of Wight?
And it was the special sea service or what?
Oh, SAS.
They did it in they did it in like half an hour, and they well, I think it was less than that actually. They secured it, but yeah, they were going. I think these stowaways took over the boat, didn't they? And they could tell by the course it was taking. It was just going round in circles.
I guess another good point is we're increasing our defence spending. We might as well put the money to good use. Why not stick the Navy out there? Shove it. Yeah. I guess. To be honest, that's another thing I think about with Brexit and kind of no deal. like I said, I understand some people's fears, not being able to deal with Europe and tariffs. Tariffs are never a good thing. They never work. But, I think that, the British people and the British economy is strong enough on its own. And look back to history. We didn't become, the world's largest ever empire. We didn't need Europe's help to do that. Maybe I'm just being nostalgic there. I don't know. But
it was our downfall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose, in America, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've done probably the main topics we're on about before. Jack, have you got anything in your head that's been in the news recently that you've been thinking about?
No, not. I suppose there is some. It's not strictly been in the news, but it's like the idea of: do you think that people who have been convicted of a crime should be given the option to join the army and serve? I mean, as we've got all this new money into the army, should they? I mean, not every role in the army has a gun. Should rather than having, I suppose it's. I don't know. I don't know where the boundaries are on forced labour. It's like, do you make them do something for their country, or do you give them the option anyway to do it? As it's just something I was thinking about. What do you think?
Go on, Luke. I'll let you answer that one first.
That's an interesting point you put across, actually, because I thought you were going to say something like, "Oh, well, should criminals be decided to vote?" And obviously, in my opinion, that's not the case. I don't think they should, but in terms of like getting into the armed forces, I don't think they should be trusted with anything like a gun or like that. But in terms of like being an engineer, in terms of like just catering, obviously there's got to be a load of caterers and for like the soldiers, the armed forces. If you've got like experience in like medical expertise, there's always a place for you in like the medicinal wards or whatever. But in terms of like on the front line, I don't think there should be a place for a criminal. But in terms of like catering and engineering, I think there should be. Yeah. I don't know about you, Tom, but
yeah, I'd probably agree. I guess it depends obviously on crime. Going convicted murderers, mass murder. I think that's a bit far, especially people with terrorism offences. But I think for small time crimes, I mean, for me anyway, I think weed should be legal. More for the economic side of it. But I think for small time, offences, if you want to call that, I think absolutely. Like I said, there's lots of different jobs in the army. It's not just everyone gets given a rifle and there you go, boys, have fun. And I think as well, the army teaches discipline. I've not been in it myself, but my dad has been in it. He served in Northern Ireland. The army teaches discipline. It teaches you skills that stay with you for the rest of your life. And I think that being able to join the army and gain a career, it is a career. It's kind of, you could see it's probably repaying a debt to the country. Do you know what I mean? Serving society in a way. Serving your country. It teaches you life skills. You get paid, disciplines you. So it probably means you're probably less likely to re-offend, in my opinion. I think like I said, catering staff, engineers, all the other backroom kind of stuff. I think absolutely. I think they should be allowed the opportunity to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think petty criminals should be given the option because to give back, and it's probably more of a it probably does better than what prison's designed for, like to I don't know what's the word, not re-educate. That's the wrong word. Rehabilitate. Yeah, it might do more to rehabilitate than being in a prison, being taught. Because I suppose you all go through basic training of drills and stuff. So I think it's national service, isn't it? Rather, I suppose it won't be the rest of your life. It might be just depending. You get a shorter sentence in the army than you do in a cell. But that was just something I was thinking about. I thought
that's a good question. Actually, that's something I've not actually thought about. Like Luke said, criminals giving the vote. That's one that usually gets banned around a lot. But that's an interesting question, actually. I guess, Luke, have you got anything that's burning on your mind that you've been thinking about?
I think we've gone through everything this week, anyways. Probably might have something next week, but my main thing was like the vaccinations. Obviously, that was the main news that was coming out. But we've already covered that. So I think in terms of me, that's all done.
I guess the only one that I've probably got coming to mind is, in the dying days of the Trump administration, there are calls to give a pardon to both Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Jack, I'll let you go first. What are your views on whether, they both should be pardoned, one of them should be pardoned, no pardons at all? What's your kind of views on it?
I think, it depends when you ask him, done it with Trump, but he benefited quite a lot, didn't he, from what Assange did, especially with the WikiLeaks and the emails, and what he used to sort of build his campaign against all the like Hillary and all the other opposition. So I think if he was, depending on when you ask him and whether or not he'll acknowledge WikiLeaks existing and never hearing of it, I think yeah, he probably should. I don't really. What is his? Has he been accused of rape in Scandinavia? I don't know how much evidence that carries.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it depends. I suppose it depends on that, on whether or not he should be given the pardon. But with Snowden, did he reveal the mass surveillance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that he's applied for Russian citizenship now. I think, hasn't he, with his wife? But yeah, I'd probably say it's not a good look, is it, when your government is spying on you, when he's spying on every single thing you do without your acknowledgement. So I'd probably say, Trump being Trump, I'd probably say he would. I think he would. I think he should, especially with Assange and how he's benefited from it. That'd be my perspective.
Luke, what do you think?
In terms of Assange, I've not really that's not really my type of politics. I don't really know much about it. I don't really know much about what he did previously, but I know a little bit about what Snowden did. Obviously, with that mass surveillance thing, and he was extradited to, or not extradited. He was fled in exile to Russia. I think it was Hong Kong or somewhere before that. But I think he should be given a pardon because stuff like that can actually benefit give knowledge to some of the Americans that probably would have been oblivious to that. So I think he should be pardoned in terms of that. But in terms of Assange, I'll be honest, I've got no idea about anything about that, to be honest.
I agree. I think, like I said, I personally would probably have to look more into what Assange's, released. Like I said, I know about the WikiLeaks stuff and Hillary Clinton, and I think stuff like that should have been made, the American public should have been made aware. Because, technically what she was doing was illegal. It's just James Coney, the FBI director, kind of shoved it to one side. But, I think for me, the more the public knows, the better. I know the argument against it is kind of, some of the stuff they released had, highly classified information and therefore could be a national security risk, and they didn't redact names in certain areas, of active military personnel. But at the same time, what the NSA was doing, what GCHQ in Britain was doing, it was a mass illegal spying campaign, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the US, which is basically the one below the Supreme Court, basically said that, what they did was, illegal. It broke the Constitution. It broke the Article 4 of the Constitution against illegal searches and seizures. And I think, the public should be aware of stuff like that. Yes, it is a national security risk, but you can't, that's totalitarian. That's something that the Chinese do. That's something that the North Koreans do. The Cubans do. They spy on their own populations. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I think for what Edward Snowden did, in particular for himself, what he uncovered, I think more than kind of grants him kind of a pardon to me, other than he didn't redact some names, so it's a national security risk. And plus, I think Trump should just do it for banter, to be honest. I think just on the last few days, just fuck it, I'll pardon him, I'll pardon him, I'll pardon him. Just do it for banter. Because I know he's on about running in 2024, right? But I don't think the Republicans would let it happen. I think they would be stupid to let it happen. Because, the US election, really, it was a rejection of him. It wasn't a rejection necessarily of his policies, because the Republicans gained in the House, and it looks like they're probably going to keep the Senate, barring a massive wave in Georgia. So it's not necessarily a rejection of his ideas. It was just, look, we don't like him. We just prefer, Biden instead. So I think, on his last days for me, just banter, just go, oh, fuck it, I'll pardon him, I'll do this, I'll do this. Just do it, why not? He's been 4 years of just memes. He is a walking, talking meme. He's funny. I mean,
Twitter account's full of it.
That's the thing. I mean, look, you can disagree on his policies, or whatever, the way he conducts himself, but you can't admit he's not funny. Like, the man is really fucking funny. I don't know if you remember, when all this thing was on about, he might buy Greenland, and then he tweeted a picture of Trump Tower in Greenland, and he was like, I will not do this to Greenland. And it's, it's just funny what he does. For me, it is anyway. But, yeah. So, I think we've probably got through.
You'd probably just tweet the pardon as well rather than write it.
Yeah, exactly. I think he won't tell anybody in his, in the justice service or anything like that. DOJ. He won't tell anyone. He'll just go, fuck it, pardon these people. Just do it for the meme. So
yeah.
But yeah. So, is anybody got anything else that we want to talk about before we leave?
Not for me.
No. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. This has made my week.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah.
Oh,
thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
No worries, Jack. Like I say, we'll have you back on probably in some time.
Cheers. If anything else happens in the East, I'll be sure to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can be our Russia correspondent from now on. So if anything happens over there, we'll get you back on. But no, thanks for coming on. So thanks very much, guys, for watching. If you have made it to the end as well, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. And thanks very much, and we will see you next time. See you later.
See you in a bit.